This is another kind of topic is when you, like, we had a lot of comics that were canceled pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you knew 4 issues in, you know, DC was pretty blunt about these 6 are going out.
Mm-hmm.
But there were still people that kept reading the titles. I thought Grifter was going to be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did with Mr. Terrific, is I stayed on until the 8th issue because I liked him in, you know, the Justice Society of America. But
And then all of us who had our comics canceled, we really sat there wondering why it was being canceled. Well, obviously it's because I was the only person collecting OMAC.
Yeah.
I realized that.
I loved OMAC.
That's what OMAC
what
was.
do I know?
OMAC was pure fun.
Yeah.
When DC put out a year ago this month, they put out, no, a year ago September.
Yeah.
A year ago September, they put out 52 new titles. I collected 26 of them. And they really excited me. One was Deathstroke. Initially, I wasn't going to, but I'm a big fan of early '90s 2000 AD comics. I even believe that style led to Image. Image Comics is very much in the style of the previous 10 years of 2000 AD. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the big shoulder pads and then compare them to Strontium Dogs and Judge Dredd, you suddenly realize, oh, big guns, big shoulder pads, small heads. That's exactly what 2000 AD was doing for many years. So the point I'm trying to say is Deathstroke looked great.
Yeah.
And it was great. And there was well, I can't even remember one was Justice League Dark.
Yeah.
One was, these are all the ones that I ended up having to cut.
Yeah.
One was, Detective Comics by Tony Daniel. I've been loving Tony Daniel.
Actually, here's the funny thing. I initially bought, when I first came into Comic Book Inc. One day I walked in and there were some comics sitting there. The first 4 comics I bought were Aquaman, Flash, Batman the Dark Knight, and Suicide Squad. Mm-hmm. I'm only reading one of those.
Which one?
Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
that's the only one I'm still reading. And it's funny because it's like, those were the ones that I said, you know, I'm going to stick with these. These look great. It's Flash, it's Aquaman, it's these guys.
It's weird you quit Aquaman. Aquaman's been one of the big fan favorites of the group.
Oh no, I do still like Aquaman, but for me, Aquaman was one of those books that I cut for budgetary reasons. That was one of those...
And that was one, I actually, and this is, I wish I would have kept this. I made a list of all the comics from DC. And I made a 3-level chart of how much do I look forward to it when it comes out. How much 3-tiered chart. How much do I look forward to it when it comes out? How much does it fit into? Because I do what you do. I make arcs out of my comic books. How much does it fit into my comic book arcs? And I remember. Oh, and then I had an extra one just for something super special. So Deathstroke was the one that it was like I actually did the chart 3 times, and one time Deathstroke was off, another time it was on, and then the third time it was off again. So I cut it from the list.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it was. That was for budgetary reasons. And then after that, I would cut or keep comics based upon the writing. So to bring it back to the original point, budgetary reason does work. But the reason why I don't allow budget to dictate my comic book choices is because if I did that, I'd only buy one comic book. Because I don't think I could seriously allow comic books into my budget because I don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I consider myself a patron of the arts. I know that by buying a comic book, I'm supporting a specific trend in art. And by doing that, that's how I justify my comic book expense.
And see, this is where I find a problem sometimes, and the only reason budgetary, it's not really that big of a thing for me. I mean, I still get like 40 comics from all the different brands. But at the same time, one of the things that always kind of makes me kind of go, is when you look at a comic and you look at its price. I've had this discussion with people before, the huge difference when you really think about it between a $2.99 comic and a $3.99 comic.
But I can't, and I suppose what this discussion is pointing out to me that I need to budget my comic books because I can't do that. If I do that, I'll only buy one comic book. If I sit down and think, well, what's actually worth the money that I'm paying, none of them will be worth it.
For me, it was I started off only picking up DC and some Image, like Walking Dead, Chew, like stuff like that. That's all I picked up in Power. But that's all I picked up was DC for the most part. And so I could get away with getting a ton of DC titles But then
And they were all $3.99.
yeah,
That's
$2.99, $3.99. They were all pretty. It was pretty.
Oh, $2.99.
It was pretty stagnant, But then I started broadening my horizons. I started reading Marvel. I started reading Dark Horse. I started reading more Image, and then it became a thing of, well, there are a lot of really good Marvel titles. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a $3.99 comic, though. Batman is now a $3.99 comic. Ultimate Comics Spider-Man and Ultimate Comics X-Men, both titles that I dearly love, are both $3.99. I'm never going to drop Spider-Man. I will read Spider-Man until Dan Slott keels over and dies.
There you go. You see, and
But
so
I will read Spider-Man for as long as same with Ultimate Spider-Man. And there are just titles that I will keep, regardless of price. They could make Amazing Spider-Man $14, and I would still pick up every issue because I believe in the comic so much, and its art and its writing and everything. But at the same time, if there is that price too, then for me there's I pick up a lot of comics, but there are I read all 3 Spider-Man titles. That's like $10 for just those 3 comics. That's not the problem. It's the $10 bucks. That's $10 that is set aside for that. Like with Empowered, there's $17 a pop. I'm picking up every single one of them.
and they're not. And that one you're going to trade paperback.
Yeah.
That's made.
It's made just for trade too. So, but it's one of those things where I'm never going to drop some of these books. They're set aside. I counted out. There's $29 after tax set aside for certain comics that's part of it. You cannot cut that off of me. It's like cutting off my arm. You cannot cut that off of me. But then there are the other titles that are I'm not so, you'll take this comic away from my cold dead body. Why isn't that? Why don't I feel that? Why don't I feel such passion for these comics than I did the other ones? The thing though that I find myself is there's a moment when I know I'm going to drop a book. I mean, I know that it's you know what? I'm dropping this title. When do you know you're going to drop a title? When do you know that it's I like this title or I hate this title? I mean, it's pretty easy to I hate this title. I'm not going to pick it up anymore. But when do you know that it's I'm going to drop this book?
I was collecting Secret Adventures because the writer, Rick Remender, was writing a really great story in Secret Avengers. And it really, I did not expect it, and I enjoyed it. It's very pleasurable. And then they tied it into this X-Men versus Avengers.
Yeah, this really next thing.
And the last issue, and that's interesting, with the last issue, I thought, well, this is just crap. I'm probably not going to buy another one of these. I probably will stop buying the entire thing because, like I said before, I'm always sitting here thinking, golly, I wish I had more money to buy comic books. I don't have a lot of money. So if you give me a reason to drop a title, I'll drop the title. Because honestly, I would rather pay for pizza than comic books. The point I'm trying to say is, as soon as I was able to look at one comic book confidently and say, I'm dropping this comic book, suddenly then that gave me liberty to look at this Fantastic Four title, which I've been doubting for a couple months, the Ultimates title, which I've been doubting for a couple months, and I didn't even know I was doubting Red Hood. But yeah, I've been doubting Red Hood.
See, and that's the thing, it's when you know you're going to drop a comic. It's kind of easy when you see that one moment or that one thing where it's I'm going to drop this. But you just said, I've been doubting for a while, or I've been doubting for months. What kept you on? Was it the writing and the art?
I kept hoping they were going to go back to the original writing that I fell in love with.